So we had a little practice session today with gimbals.
Yes, we did.
In the studio. Zach has been doing a lot of reels and stuff. He's super proficient on his phone, but the full the full DSLR setup is kind of newish, and trying to get the moves down and all that kind of stuff for the flowing in shots and everything. So I just wanted to get your perspective. What was, for anybody else who might be listening, what was most helpful to you for what we figured out today?
Yep. So I feel like getting out of your head is the biggest thing. For me, at least, I felt like I had everything reversed. So I felt like moving slower would make everything smoother, but found out that moving slower actually makes it a little bit more shaky. So moving quicker at like a smoother pace is actually, I said paced. At a smoother pace would make it a little bit more smooth and a little bit more, or have a little bit less of that shake.
And that's for the longer movements.
That's for a longer moving all the way down, more than like 20 feet.
We practice pushing through the whole studio here and then turning at the end.
Yep.
And when we're going slow, you do kind of feel every movement, and it was a little shaky. We reviewed the footage.
Yep.
We picked up his pace a little bit, and maybe it was just getting out of his head. I don't know, but it flew so nice, like in an ice luge.
It's reverse psychology.
Yeah.
So you think one way, but then when you try it, it's actually the other way.
Yeah. But I will say that on like the detail shots, though, that's where you do really have to go probably twice as slow as you thought in your head.
Yep.
Right? So it's opposite on that one.
Yep. Oh, bend the knees.
Oh,
Bend the knees.
That was a good thing. That was a good takeaway. Zach has a tendency from running and stuff like this to be on his kind of tiptoes a little bit.
Almost like the balls of your feet.
Balls, okay.
Whatever this part is.
Yeah, don't walk on your balls, guys. Uncomfortable. So the balls of his feet, but he was kind of springing a little bit doing that. And if you think about this was the example I told Zach, is like you need just a little bit of a bend in your legs so that you can kind of even that out and keep yourself level. When we practice, just keep your shoulders. They shouldn't be going up and down. If your shoulders are going straight, you're good. And I kind of equated that to if you jumped out of a tree fort and landed with your legs straight,
snap.
Everything's going right through your body, and you're definitely bouncing up and down. So you get that little cushion in your legs with just a little bit of a bounce. You feel like a weirdo.
It feels weird. You look a little weird.
Yeah,
like you're like half crawl walking.
Yeah, you're like walking through somebody's house, and they're like looking at you, and you're like, hey. Don't mind me.
Around the corner, just jump scare.
Yeah, jump scare. So, but yeah, it made a big difference,
yes,
right?
100%.
So that smoothed it out. And then I will say, if you haven't had a gimbal before, these things are expensive, and you think they'd be like totally ironed out, but they're really a pain in the ass.
Yep.
And there's always like 4 or 5 things that are going to stump you until you figure them out, and you're like, oh, really? That was it? And so we had at least one of those today, 2 of those today, right? Yeah.
30 minutes of setting up the gimbal, even though yesterday it was working perfectly.
Yes.
But somehow it wanted to throw my camera off the gimbal across the room because it would not stop shaking.
It was shaking up and down when we turned it on, and I rebalanced the thing, and it was perfectly balanced. It was like, I can't get it any better balance than this. Turn it on, same thing. It was literally like hopping in place, freaking out. Like
everything was unlocked. Everything was loose, how it should be. And it was the auto-tune.
Yeah, and we went back and figured out somehow this auto-tune function, which I've never touched in my gimbal.
I've never touched it.
Was all at like 100%.
Which it should not.
It should not be.
It should be at like half of that, I should assume.
Recalibrated that stupid thing, and the thing worked perfectly.
Yep, stop shaking.
It just goes to show you, if you didn't know about that one thing, if you were on site, you'd be dead in the water.
Yeah, I would be.
Couldn't do anything with it. It was...
I would not know what to do.
Unless it was a horror film.
I'd be calling Neil and freaking out because I don't know why my camera's shaking, and he probably would not be able to help me because he would not know what I'm talking about.
I'd be like, get your cell phone and shoot it on your cell phone.
Yeah, for sure. At least that's
that would have been the solution, I think. Like, I don't care if you handhold your cell phone through the whole house and get your footage, or I'd have to drive my gimbal out there would be the other option.
Yeah,
right?
no, we're not doing that.
So, yeah. So, anyway, check that setting.
Yes.
And then the other thing was, we're having a hard time with his gimbal, trying to do pushing in and rotating as you go, and some of those moves that we wanted to work on, and some of the parallax stuff where you're twisting the grip and stuff, came down to settings.
Yes.
And so we played around with the deadband setting and the...
I think it's follow speed.
Yeah, follow speed, thank you. How fast the follow speed was to find what worked best for Zach.
Yes.
And I forget what it was, but
I think it's slow. No, I think it's medium follow speed and slow dead band. That's what it's called.
Yeah.
Which is funny because it's exactly opposite of you.
Yeah.
Which is the same settings, but just reversed for you.
A good point here is the fact that it works perfectly well on mine, and I could do it on his too, actually. But the way his was set up originally, I could not do it either on his camera. It was too slow on adjusting to my movements.
Yep.
So we tweaked those settings. His are still a little different than mine, but they both work for us. So it goes to show you can't just always go by what somebody says online. Do this setting and that. It might not work for you. And likewise, there's a lot of settings you can reverse, like the toggle up, toggle down. We talked about that today.
Yes.
Where, if you press the joystick up, do you expect the lens to go up or do you expect the lens to go down?
Yep.
And so that could be totally different between Zach and I. So play around with those settings.
Yeah.
And that might be the one thing that's holding you back to I can't get these smooth shots that they're getting. It might just be as simple as those dumb settings right there.
Normalize customization. Customization is key, in my opinion, and default is old news. I don't think default is
old news.
I don't like default.
Customization, says Zach.
Right? I don't think default is the right move anymore.
And Zach says he wants a podcast, and I think he should do it because I think he's a natural at this.
My heart rate was a little high. My palms were sweating, quite literally.
As soon as I said, "Hey, let's film this."
Now we're sitting down, comfortable setting, talking.
Chill. And we also talked about the fact that holding the microphones feels a little bit more casual.
Yeah, my anxiety would be through the roof, flailing like this. But I have something steady that I'm speaking into, which is a lot better than me just moving my hands.
So if you're trying to get on camera, you need a little blankie to feel comfortable.
Yeah, this is my security blanket.
Holding a microphone, because it takes away the hold, what do I do with my hands? And you're sitting there awkwardly. It actually does. You're like, oh, I hold the mic.
Yeah. Just don't hold it upside down.
Yeah.
Or we find that holding it backwards, so you're not breathing into the mic like this.
Yeah.
Having it back here actually helps a little bit.
We were getting a lot of
breath,
plosive wind noise into it. If we
ASMR.
So anyway, ASMR. Hello. What else? Was there any other takeaways we had?
Takeaways?
Oh, I wanted to say that those settings were in user profile. These are both DJI gimbals, and there's a user profile. That's where those settings were that you could play around with. But there's a lot of videos on those settings that you can check out online. Just check out those. But just know that you might not like the same settings somebody else has to play with it.
Yep. I think also gimbal weight has, because right before we were doing this, I picked these up, and one was significantly heavier, almost like probably, I would want to say double the amount.
Yeah.
In our cameras, we have the same exact cameras, almost same lens, and the gimbal, your gimbal is so much heavier.
Yeah.
I think that might help with that movement. So however, depending on which gimbal you have, having your settings account for the weight and holding it, I think that's probably why we're reversed, because yours is like double my weight.
True, could have a factor, and they're just different gimbals. The motors are probably different, so they might react different to different settings. But yeah, something else to consider if you're getting a gimbal is, this is an expensive gimbal that a lot of the features I don't necessarily need for real estate. It comes with a whole bunch of add-ons and all this stuff, the cat eye system, or I forget what it's called, and all this stuff that I've used a couple times on video production, but don't use it real estate. Whereas this one here is, a lot lighter, a lot less taxing to carry around, and cheaper.
Yeah,
and
budget friendly.
You're
the Ronin SC, I believe.
Yeah, and you're getting the same shots I'm getting. Yeah, Ronin SC. There's a whole bunch of them, but this one works good once you know the flipping settings.
Yeah, no pain in
the little
butt.
things that'll mess with you. But yeah, get good at balancing your camera. Make sure you know how to do that before you go out on site.
That was, I think, the most daunting part was figuring out how to balance it, because it's a very micro, fine tool. That's not a word, but micro tuning. There you go. Micro tuning to figure out how your camera is going to fit on there, and even then, both of us for a half hour before this was struggling to put this on, because
and this one is slightly different, and so we were stuck in this knob that adjusts two things at once. Maybe and we thought maybe the weight load is too much for it, so it has to be perfectly balanced for this thing to work. But no, it was a dumb setting.
It's pretty dumb.
Anyway, but yeah, hopefully some of this is helpful.
I think so.
Cool. Well, get out there and have fun with your gimbal.
Yeah, create, make it.
Word.
Yeah.